Okay, missionary work effectiveness from the Book of Mormon record. Now, throughout the Book of Mormon, there are two recurring things that happen, and that is missionary work and war. And these two things kind of dominate the pages of the Book of Mormon record. Sometimes one preceded the other, sometimes they went together hand in hand. But what is very clear from the record is that missionary work was far more effective than war in bringing salvation to people and preparing them for their eternal rewards. It also contributed a lot more effectively to creating a better society. As far as I can recall, there is only one instance in the Book of Mormon, so it's extremely rare, where war kind of caused something good among the people. I've got it right here. So in Alma 62, when we get towards the end of all these chapters on the wars between the Lamanites and the Nephites, in chapter 62 of Alma, in verse 41, it states this: "Because of the exceedingly great length of the war between the Nephites and the Lamanites, many have become hardened." So there's the negative consequences of war. "Because of the exceedingly great length of the war. And many were softened because of their afflictions, insomuch that they did humble themselves before God, even in the depth of humility." So, war can do either two things. It can make you more hard in the heart and bring you further away from God, or it can soften your heart, make you more humble and reliant and dependent upon God. In the Book of Mormon, we get this one example. So my conclusion is that missionary work was by far more effective than war. And then in this video, we're going to examine some famous examples of that missionary work. Now, the sons of King Mosiah were among the most famous examples of missionary work in the Book of Mormon record. Starting from Alma chapter 17, we can read quite detailed accounts of the missionary work of these four sons of Mosiah, along with Alma and Amulek and Muloki and others that were with them and went on this absolutely mammoth 14-year mission to the Lamanites, who were, according to the record, a bloodthirsty people. They only sought to make war with the Nephites, promoted by their eternal hatred of the Nephites, lived lives of sin and wickedness and ignorance, and if you can imagine, they would have probably been the most awful and worst people that you could possibly go to and attempt to share the good news of Jesus Christ with. Now, of course, that reminds me very much of my mission, which was only 2 years compared to their 14, and which saw me suffer far less than what they suffered. But anyway, I'd like to share a very little brief moment about my mission. Maybe bring a couple of pictures here for you to see. First of all, I was sent to the Singapore mission, where I served throughout Singapore and Malaysia. Here's a picture of me at Horn Road. Now, my surname is Horn, so it was pretty neat to go to the other side of the world and find my surname on a road sign. That was pretty cool. Of course, one of the many highlights of serving a mission are these moments where you get to baptize people whom you've taught, which we read about also in the Book of Mormon record. But yeah, there were also moments where I got punched by a man as I was walking down the street in the chest. He walked between me and my companion and just punched us on the chest. I'm not so sure he was all there mentally, but that happened to us. And then a man from Australia, just outside a shopping mall, we got into a conversation, and as soon as I mentioned Joseph Smith, well, that set the alarm bells ringing in this guy's mind. and he brought out all this spite, all this venom. He was shouting at me in the street. The spittle from his mouth was flying all over me, in my face and everything. And he vented all of his feelings, and then I stood there and simply testified that I know Joseph Smith is a true prophet of God. And we ended the conversation at that. So yeah, there were great moments. Yeah, there were some bad moments. I don't think it's comparable to what the sons of Mosiah went through according to the record. But of course, I feel really honoured that I was able to be a missionary. And here in the Book of Mormon, we have these great examples of missionaries, and that's why the Book of Mormon has become such a great missionary tool. It's this second witness of Jesus Christ, and it's full of missionary work. And missionary work done really well and really effectively. So let's get into it. Now, before we go into this and the sons of Mosiah and their missions and everything, while I was really engrossed in it and I was thinking about it and I was had the Book of Mormon on my mind, I had this recollection that I'd read somewhere in the Book of Mormon that Ammon was a descendant of Mulek, that he was one of the Mulekites. And then just yesterday, while we were reading the Book of Mormon as a family, I recalled another verse, which I later went back to check, and it said that Ammon is one of the sons of King Mosiah, a Nephite. So it was going through our mind, Ammon can't be both a Mulekite and a Nephite at the same time. And I was thinking, wow, is there something wrong with the Book of Mormon? Have I found something, a mistake in the Book of Mormon? Like, I don't want to be the guy who finds an anomaly in the Book of Mormon. What if I have done? What does this mean? Does this like throw into question the entire authenticity of the Book of Mormon? Little was I thinking that, man, we've had this book for almost 200 years. There are Book of Mormon scholars and experts who've pored over this book and know it from cover to cover, back to front. A little anomaly like this would have been found a long time ago if there was. But anyway, in that state of panic, I thought, I better go and research this and I better go and find out what's going on here. And so the first thing I did was go to the index of the Book of Mormon and I searched for the word Ammon. And to my relief, there were 2 Ammons in the Book of Mormon. And I never realized, because you know, guys, right? Whenever you think of Ammon, what are the first things that come to your mind? You think, oh wow, he's that really big, strong, powerful, muscly guy. He threw stones in a sling at Lamanites, and he chopped off Lamanite arms, and then he went and taught the gospel and converted the entire household of King Lamoni, the Lamanite king. That's what you think about when you think of Ammon. But as it turns out in the index, there are actually 2 Ammons, and I'd never really fully understood that. And I thought that was really interesting. It was a relief that there's nothing wrong with the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is true. It was translated by Joseph Smith. He didn't write it, he just translated it. So the first Ammon is different to the second Ammon. They're different people, and they are from different peoples. It's really cool. So the first Ammon was actually one of a group of 16 people whom King Mosiah sent to try and find a group of their people who had previously left and gone back to the land of Nephi because they wanted to go back to the land of their first inheritance. And so Ammon, who was a descendant of Zarahemla from these Mulekite people, he was one of these people that went back to find those people. Whereas Ammon II was one of the sons of King Mosiah, happened to be of the same name as Ammon I, and he is one of those sons of the king who were very much against the church, very much trying to bring down the church and speak badly of it and living reckless lives, who of course were converted when they saw an angel and then became these great young missionaries that did so much good amongst the Lamanites. But anyway, that was something I learned about Ammon while I was going over things and thinking about making this video on the sons of Mosiah. Now, the thing that I wanted to cover and what I wanted to really talk about in this video is timelines. I absolutely love timelines. I love studying the scriptures and taking notes after notes after notes of the order of events, the sequence of things, as far as possible the years that things happened in the scriptures, whether it's in the Old Testament, the Bible, the Book of Mormon, whenever it is. Timelines just open my eyes to understanding. They help me to see how things happened and the order that things happened, and this really kind of accelerates my learning and understanding of things in the scriptures. So I absolutely love timelines. I'm all about it. And so as my family and I have been recently, the last week or so, we've been reading these great missionary chapters from Alma in the Book of Mormon. I got pretty curious about the sons of Mosiah, about what happened and their missionary work and the time that thing happened. So I've put it all together in a timeline, and I just wanted to go through that timeline with you so that we can see better the effectiveness of missionary work from the Book of Mormon time. All right then, so as we get into this timeline, it begins around the year 124 BC in ancient America, when King Benjamin anointed his son Mosiah as the king of Zarahemla. Fast forward to 192 BC, the four sons of Mosiah, along with Alma the Younger, are unbelievers, worshipping idols, actively seeking to destroy the church and lead the people astray. Now, around the same time and shortly after that, while they are in the business of going around trying to destroy and pull down the church, they are met and reproved by an angel. An angel is sent to them because they are so far away. They can't feel this quiet voice of the Spirit talk to them anymore. Their attitude and behavior is so low that it required an angel to go and see them. After 2 days of unconsciousness, Alma recovers, repents, and starts repairing the damage that he has done to the church. Now, the next time on the timeline is around 91 BC, which is when King Mosiah authorizes a group of young men, which includes his four sons, who had requested of their dad that he would let them go on a mission to the Lamanites in the land of Nephi, which was a pretty dangerous thing to do. Interestingly, around that same time, just after they had left to go to the Lamanites, their dad, King Mosiah, died. And I wonder how soon they were able to discover that and whether it impacted them, whether it gave them more motivation in the missionary work, or, you know, it's one of those parts that's kind of missing from the account there. But then we go on to a period between 91 and 77 BC. So we know that the sons of Mosiah, along with others that went with them, they embarked on a 14-year mission. Nowadays, we go between 18 months to 24 months. They went on a 14-year mission to a bloodthirsty people who only wanted to kill the Nephites. But during this 14 years, many Lamanites are converted through their preaching, and they call themselves anti-Nephi Lehis. Now, at this point, I would also like to just go over some effective components of missionary work that I found in these Alma chapters regarding Alma the Younger and regarding the four sons of Mosiah and those that went with them. And in these early chapters of Alma, I identified 5 main components of effective missionary work. Now, of course, we have Preach My Gospel, that missionary guide, which contains pages and pages and pages of effective components and precepts and principles of missionary work. But just for this timeline and just for this section of the Book of Mormon, I did come across 5 which I thought were really important. And while we're here at 91 BC, when the sons of Mosiah first set out on their mission, we come across the first component, which is preparation. Now we read the very famous passage in Alma 17, where it talks about how they prepared for their mission, that they'd fasted and prayed much, they had searched the scriptures so that they could know it for themselves. And so gaining a testimony of what you are going out to preach is pretty important before you go out to preach. Now, you can develop a testimony while you're on your mission. Not every young man or young woman fully knows for themselves sometimes when they go and serve a mission, but it comes pretty quickly. But if you can get yourself ready and prepared before you serve, and you can hit the ground running, then that's what can help to lay a really good foundation for missionary work. We have missionary preparation classes, which are on offer in most wards, branches, districts and stakes around the world. I was privileged to be one of 3 missionary preparation class teachers in my district. And just while I was preparing this video, found news that a friend of mine has just been called on her mission, and she is going to Madagascar. Now, it's funny because anytime people ask me or ask everyone, guess where I'm going on my mission, right? In the days before they get the mission call, and everybody lists down all these nice places. So I always like to go for something weird and exotic, just for the humor of it, for the fun of it. And the first place that always comes into my head is Madagascar, just because it seems so wild and so out there. And I always do that just for fun. But it turns out that our friend here has got her call to serve in precisely Madagascar. She's going to be a great missionary and going to have an amazing experience there. Let's move on with the timeline now, shall we? So we're still kind of in this 91 to 77 BC, but within that range, in 86 to 83 BC, we have the next one, and this is Alma, who baptizes thousands of converts in the land of Zarahemla. And this was right after there was a big war with the Lamanites. So there were many baptisms, there were many people looking for faith and looking for Christ at this time. But unfortunately, they very quickly lost their way, perhaps because there were just so many of them. You will sometimes find that when there are so many people joining the church at one time, the retention effort becomes too great to keep up with, and that might be what happened here. So as a result of this, 83 to 77 BC, Alma the Younger decides that he's not going to be chief judge anymore. And so Nephite is called as the chief judge, and Alma the Younger devotes himself to preaching the gospel to the Nephites in this retention or reactivation effort. Just as important as missionary work, preaching the gospel to those who don't know it, is preaching the gospel to those who do know it but have strayed from it. So that's what Alma the Younger was focused on during these great missionary chapters. Now, next on our timeline, we go back to these anti-Nephi Lehis that were the product of the sons of Mosiah's missionary work. Now, they were Lamanites, and they had killed many people, many Nephites previously. And so they decided they were going to make a covenant to never pick up their weapons and to never go to war and to never kill a single soul ever again. And there is the deeply distressing chapter, it's Alma 24, isn't it? Where the Lamanites come and the anti-Nephi Lehis just lie themselves down and just let themselves get killed. And this really affected these bloodthirsty, ferocious Lamanites, that they stopped what they were doing, and many of them were so stung and were so hurt for these crimes that they had committed that they got onto the repentance road and joined the church. And it ended up there were more of these Lamanites that joined the church than anti-Nephi Lehis who were killed. So it's interesting the way things work sometimes. Okay, more Lamanites joined the church through the continued missionary efforts of the sons of Mosiah. Okay, now we get to 77 BC. And this is a time where Ammon and Alma have been doing lots of missionary work, been preaching the gospel for around the last 14 years, and finally they meet again. And we read in the scriptures what a happy and joyous meeting this is. And they decide that they need to get the anti-Nephi Lehis somewhere safer. So they take them back to the land of Zarahemla, and they are given the land of Jershon. Once they arrive in the land of Jershon and the Nephites have accepted them, they become known as the people of Ammon. It's the same people, but just known by a different name. And they do go on to become the most faithful of all the members of the church in Zarahemla, including the Nephites. So that's kind of a remarkable conversion and retention story, right? Okay, where are we on the timeline? We now come to 3 more years later, at 74 BC, and Alma and Amulek this time are preaching to the Zoramites. Zoramites were Nephites who had kind of broken away and kind of forgot about the gospel and the covenants and the teachings, and were doing their own thing in their own synagogues. And Alma and Amulek went over and preached to them, and those that believed joined the people of Ammon. So this group of anti-Nephi Lehis, or people of Ammon, keeps growing and growing and growing, right? Finally, we have 64 to 62 BC. So this is a good 10 years later, and this is where there is great war with the Lamanites against the Nephites. And these people of Ammon, of course, had made the covenant they're not going to fight anymore. And so it's really interesting that their children who had not entered this covenant then went on to take up arms to go to battle to defend their country, their land, their freedoms and their religion from the Lamanites. And it was a product of the great missionary work of the previous 20 to 30 years that produced these 2,000 sons of the people of Ammon who were led by Helaman, where miraculously not one single one of them died in these really fierce wars. So that's pretty amazing. Now, as far as the missionary work goes, I talked about preparation as the first component. The second component is service. You will remember when Ammon went to preach to the Lamanites, he started by serving the people, right? He told the king that it was his desire to stay here, perhaps until the day he dies. Pretty much how I felt when I was a missionary too. I just didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go home. It was such a fantastic experience. And Ammon protected the king's flocks. He went and sorted out the king's horses and chariots for his transportation. He started with service, and this is what really opened the eyes and the heart of the king of the Lamanites. Now, there are other examples in the scriptures, in this book of Alma, about asking find-out questions, and the way that both Aaron and Ammon preached and taught the gospel was really personalizing the message and doing it by asking really effective find-out questions to see what the people they were teaching understood and to then relate it to something that they understood. And they did that with some really powerful yet simple questions, which are always very important in missionary work. The fourth component is teaching from the scriptures, and Aaron in Alma chapter 21 and verse 9 opened up the scriptures and began to teach from the words of God. And that's really important because we don't want to start straying a little bit and teaching the wisdom of the world and teaching from our own mind and ideas. We have the scriptures, and the scriptures are our sure guide. The gospel of Jesus Christ is contained in them, and that's what we should teach from. And finally, with Alma, we have a really great example of testifying. It's always important to share your testimony when you preach the gospel, because a testimony of the gospel invites the Spirit strongly to testify to the hearts of those who are listening that what you're speaking is true. And it's the Spirit's conversion in the heart and in the mind that makes all the difference. It's not really about the person, it's about what the Spirit can do. And when you testify of Jesus Christ and his gospel, the Spirit is present very strongly. So Alma was a great example. You can check that out in Alma chapter 5, verses 45 through 48. But there's the 5 effective components of missionary work, which is preparation, service, asking find out questions, teaching from the scriptures, and testifying. And again, it just goes to emphasize how the Book of Mormon, aside from being the second witness of Jesus Christ that it is such an effective missionary tool. It even includes really effective and powerful components of missionary work in the accounts inside it, which we can use today. So I really loved that. I really loved the timeline. I think that just brings everything, it brings everything into perspective. It puts everything in the right order. And I've really gained a lot from that. And I can see the ways in which God works over time to bring about his purposes and to bring blessings to his people who follow him and keep his covenants. Anyway, I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. It's been a good couple of weeks in studying, researching, doing lots of writing, making notes and planning and putting all this together. I hope you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing to the Last Days YouTube channel. I mostly do this for myself, so if I'm the only one watching this again, that's great for me. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and subscribe, and I'll see you again with some more videos. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.